Alright guys, I just fixed my LPM, so now it's working fine and able to put up higher than 5 watts. So we should be fine to test the rest of the power of this diode. I'll do some temp readings so you guys can see the power difference going from roughly around room temperature up to roughly around 30 C, which is typically where most people shut their lasers off at. You can see the head right now is at 18 C. I'm gonna turn up the tech and start increasing the power, and it'll start balancing out. I'll bring this straight up to 4 amps. That's 4 amps right there. That's 4.6 amps. 4.7, 4.9, that's 5 amps, 5.1 amps, 5.2, 5.3, 5.5, 5.6, 5.7, 5.9, and we're at 24 C. That's pretty much room temp. 6.2, 6.3 amps, and 6.6 amps. We're at 26 C. So you'll see at 6.6 amps, once we hit 30 C is typically where people will shut off their lasers. So 6.6 amps, 6.7 amps. So this is typically where people would shut off their lasers at roughly around 30 C. So you see we're right at 4.9 watts. So I'm going to try to stabilize the diode right now. And you'll see the difference in power. We're right around 4.9 watts at 30 C, and you'll see what the power will start at roughly room temperature, which is between 20 C and 25 C, depending on how warm your area is. I don't want to leave this type of power on heat sinked on LPM fear head too long. But typically you'll see about 5.1 watts between 5.1 watts to 5.2 watts peak at room temperature. At 6.7 amps is where it's at right now. It's bouncing in between 6.7 and 6 amps at 2.8 volts going to the diode. No fear head's getting warm slightly. The tech is not big enough to actually try to chill 6.7 amps down to anything around 0C, so we can't really tell how much more power we can get out of these below room temp, but we can probably get close to another 500 milliwatts to close to another watt possibly of power cooling this diode down to 0C at this current. I'll do that testing later. I'll have to hook that up in my sealed tech box that I made in order to test that, so I don't get any condensation. At these temperatures, you won't get any condensation at room temp around the tech, but once you start getting below 5C, that's when you'll start getting condensation if you're not in a sealed enclosure. But as you can see, 25C is roughly around the max room temperature, typically what it is. So you'll see a 5.1 watt peak at this current. So it's safe to say 5 watts at 6.6, 6.7 amps at startup. Alright, I'm going to turn it down. That's 6 amps right there. So 0.7 amps, and we gained roughly, I believe it was around 200 to 300 milliwatts. So it probably this diode typically should run at 5.6 amps is the rated max of the diode. So at 5.6, you get 4.78, or yeah, 4.8 watts at somewhere in between room temperature. Okay, which is on par with the 5 watt diode. Okay, there's probably some variance to LPMs, but at 5 watts, but pretty much spot on. Alright, so I'm going to upload this video and see what you guys think. Alright, thanks.